Welcome to the Doghouse. Have a listen as we take a look at life, love, and art in all its forms. Here's your host, the Rock Dog, Andrew Davis.
I'd like to introduce you to Jessie Lightburn. You may remember her from some of the shows earlier with the Doghouse. We had Miss Panikin, who was a hide-a-loop artist, and also she joined us with Kevin Houghton, who, of course, clearflow.ca came up with that solar-powered water purification system. Unbelievable. How you doing, Jess? Haven't seen you for a while.
Pretty good.
You had a good summer?
Yeah, I had a really good summer.
Were you traveling?
Not so much. I had an injury, so I wasn't at work, but I was able to be at home, just limited in what I was able to do and where I was able to go with doctor appointments and things like that. But led me to be able to take in a few of the local awesome festivals and things that we had going on.
So I've known you for probably going on 8 or 9 years now, but I've never actually sat down and had a conversation with you, find out more about you. So where are you from?
Well, I did grow up on the island in Nanaimo, so I spent my youth there, went to school and graduated, went off to university there just for a year, played basketball and all those kinds of sports back then. I was kind of more of a nerdy, holistic kind of a sports girl. And from there, I went off and started traveling the world. So spent 2 years in Australia. I did some study there and traveled and found the party realm, so to speak.
Were you just messing around, or were you trying to find something, or what were you doing? Just
I'm a true millennial. Like, I graduated pretty much right at the millennium, and at that time, I think what we were raised on was that we could change the world, we could be whoever we wanted to be. The world was our oyster, and that we could go off and sort of take time and travel. So there's kind of this gap year thing that was pretty popular at the time. Not that we signed up for any of that, but I did have a few girlfriends from high school that went over, so we kind of all met up at that time. And I think not necessarily finding anything in particular, but trying to figure out who we were in relation to the world.
Where else you been?
Well, I've had like a couple of stints to Asia, so I've been to China and just briefly to Thailand and down through Mexico. I have lots of places I would love to travel.
When we first met, you were kind of getting into promoting. You still like to do that, or is this something that's in your blood, or are you kind of sway in other ways?
Yeah, I think it's a natural skill set that I had. I was sort of that, event planner even in high school. I was always trying to grab the microphone and plan things. I have this natural yearning to inclusivity and creating, space and time for people to come together. That's always been something that I felt necessary. I think probably mostly because I always kind of felt as an outsider, as we were kind of talking before the show. We try to figure out who we are at a young age, and I think that, the natural skill set was there for me and wanting to bring people together and all that. And as I traveled and discovered, the amazing experience of being sort of free to develop who you are in the moment and be influenced by different people and that sort of thing, and going to these different festivals overseas, it was just such an amazing experience. And so when I came home, I definitely always had that in my back pocket that I grew up going to the Queens and, going to like Shane Phillip concerts when I was like 19. So, back 2001, 2 era. And, just always loving the live sort of experience and people just kind of like being in the moment and feeling music and just like loving the space that they were in. So, yeah, I was drawn to that in promoting. And so when I moved to the island here, actually when I moved to Courtenay 10 years ago, it was a lot different than it is now. Yeah.
Just a slight.
Yeah, it was a lot smaller at the time. Yeah.
It was. You found artists, though, that were a little bit off the beaten path, I found, too. Like you mentioned Shane Phillip. Annie Becker was another one that you brought through. Sensational singer. And wasn't Current Swell right when they were starting out was kind of, you hung out with them guys too?
Yeah, and I have Ed Vigdor to actually thank for that, because in that second year, I wanted to go a bit bigger than the first year, and he was one that suggested them at the time. And surf, indie rock, so awesome. Yeah, that was a pretty wild show, and it started just pouring rain in the set, and people were getting soaked. So to those that stayed to the end of that show, I commend them, because it was a wild Saturday night. Yeah. When I first moved here, I felt like Courtney was really sort of missing that flair of Vancouver. I'd lived in the Vancouver community for a while, and when I moved here, I was like, where's the club? Like, where's the dance bar? I mean, the Avalanche had kind of its little thing going, but it wasn't really my scene. And the Waverly was great for live music, although it was once a month or whatever. So, I didn't really know what I was kind of getting into, but I did know that there was a lot of young artist friends that I'd met traveling out in the world that were worthy of a stage or that hadn't been recognized. And that's another just part of the passion for me, is when I can see someone has talent, or I can see that they're just needing to be pushed into a bit of a direction to help them kind of, get to that next level. Yeah. So
I found that too when I was on the radio, that a lot of these artists that would come, artists like Brody Dawson and Joey Clarkson would be another one. And I liked promoting them, and I liked playing their music and letting people know what they were all about, because they were so talented. I just felt like if somebody heard them, they could get to that next level.
Absolutely. And that was kind of the reason why at 28 years old, I can't remember exactly, I think it was 28, that I decided to put on an outdoor music festival. It was just youth-based, and, in 2011. And, there was, I really labeled it as the best of the West Coast. Like, I saw a lot of amazing young artist friends of mine, and they just weren't getting on the festival circuit. And it's like, if you haven't already been on a stage, then how do you get a resume together to get on a stage? Yeah. And I mean, I'm kind of out of touch with all of it now. I've had to take a big step back, because as much as festivals and music and bringing people together are awesome, there's a sort of underlying dark side to the industry as well, that we don't really talk about, and I haven't really shared my story really around that either. But when there is pressure and you're putting yourself out a lot, and for me, it went through a few losses. You have a lot of people around you when you're doing really well, and no shame to those people, because I've been a fangirl for like a lot of my life too. But when the push comes to shove and things go down, you're left with only a handful of people that are really there to help you pick up the pieces. And for me, we had a couple of years of, quite a few years of losses mixed in with some good things. But so for me, I've been kind of on a road to recovery, so to speak. I think that a lot of the communities and just people worldwide are kind of on this road to recovery, whatever it is for them. But for me, it was picking up the pieces of if I'm not a festival promoter and if I'm not working in music, what am I?
Yeah.
Or what am I doing at this point?
Well, I've kind of had that same thoughts too, I've been in radio for over 30 years, started in 1987. So then it's like, well, what now after that suddenly ends? And I mean, the podcast thing kind of came about. I was planning on doing one anyway, so it kind of continues that lineage. I like this format though, because I think it gives me a lot more freedom that I didn't have when I was, attached to a radio station or a big corporation.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more personal.
Yeah, definitely. What are you thinking of the world? I know you're quite passionate. You're passionate about people. You're passionate about human rights. You're passionate about inclusivity. What are you seeing in the world?
Well, I mean, to quote the 2020 vision that's coming into this next decade, I think that, there's a lot of hype around Y2K. There's a lot of hype around the Mayan calendar. There's a lot of hype around this second coming, all these different religions and cultures. And but what I'm just noticing on a real ground level is that people are they're awakening to the fact that there has been, a sort of veil put over people for a really long time, and that we've been sort of guided and lied to be completely frankly honest here, that a lot of our history and a lot of what we've been taught is actually not true.
No, complete and total lies.
Yeah. So, it's disheartening and it hurts. And I think that there's a lot of grief and sadness right now. We were kind of talking about that earlier. And so for me, like I went out with my sword ablazing there a couple of years in a row and, really wanting to like wake people up, and a lot of the message falling on sort of deaf ears. And, it was really disheartening. And it can send especially like younger people, and you can see like a lot of the kids that are rising up right now. And, it's pretty awesome to see that happening. I think that eventually there's a shift that comes with it.
Yeah.
And there's great responsibility that needs to be taken for where we're at. And unfortunately, people can do so much, but it's actually leadership and government and large corporations that I feel like they have to make the trend, or they have to change the laws, that sort of a thing.
I agree. I think that the bankers and the corporations of the world, the guys in suits, they run the world, and they're running it their way. They get the guys that they want in office, and that's the way the rules sway towards them. But I have been saying for a while, too, that I'm noticing in the world that there seems to be a bit of a revolution taking place. And I think that people have, quite frankly, just had enough. And when people have had enough and they're held down for so long, eventually they just say, fuck it. And we get what's happening. I think Bolivia, I think there's all over South America is just crazy. Things that are happening, even in Brexit. And then, of course, the Orange Menace down in the States.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I've always been drawn to politics as well. Like I'm like thinking about my younger self, like watching parliamentary meetings, and I'm in high school, or really like getting into the elections. I've voted in absolutely everything that I've ever been able to vote in. I think as a woman and as just a person who's free to do that in democratic countries, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Politics are interesting. It's like. I have my favorites. I have people that are actually like really vocal and standing up for issues. And at the same time, like I can sit here in this seat as kind of a hypocrite, or maybe just like really aware of the duality that, I've worked for environmental initiatives, and I've put a lot of volunteer hours out into my communities over the last 20 years. A lot of work for like you were talking, artists and different groups, and I've put a ton of energy out, and that makes me feel better than any big paycheck that I've ever made. But at the same time, for me, like what led me to Fort McMurray in 2012 was losing all the money that I had invested into this project, which was music. And so I've had to, over the last 7 years, really look at what my options were. And so I currently am working in the oil sands.
I don't think that makes you a hypocrite, though.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're spouting off revolutionary ideas and wanting to bring about the change and still working in that, you can get, I want to say flack, or just, people on both sides like to sort of, oh, I can't believe you're doing that out there. How could you? And then other people being like, you work in mining. How can you wear a tree hugger hat? Right? And I said, guys, listen, like, it's not all or nothing, but it hurts to know that I have to, not necessarily have to, but the chosen line of work that I am in does do environmental damage. However, it's where we're at right now.
Right.
And it's what we need.
And that's why I don't think it's hypocritical, because you're using the only means that are available to us, essentially, to make any money. Really, you work in the gas and oil industry. Everybody in Canada knows that. So I don't think it's hypocritical to use what we have. And then there's the old saying of maybe you can make change happen better from the inside than on the outside.
I mean, I can't speak too much to the companies and that I work for, but I can say that they're doing everything that they can to bring in green initiatives all the time, and that they are divesting themselves in a way, or investing into green future options, and, trying to figure out if byproducts can work in the green sectors and things like that. So what the general public doesn't necessarily hear is some of those positive aspects that, I think that they know that it's going to stay around for a while, but that it's a resource that's not going to be there forever.
No. And it's going to be gone. And I think that more and more of these companies are looking at greener solutions. I think it was Maple Leaf Foods that they came out recently and said they are now carbon neutral, just through different carbon offsets and different ways of doing things in water retention and water purification and things where they take care of the pigs. Whether or not it's true, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but it sounds pretty good in print.
That sounds pretty cool. Yeah, it's amazing. Like the internet, I remember 1996, I think, like 13 years old, getting my first Hotmail account. And now just seeing what the internet really is, it's phenomenal where we've gone from, say, like my great-grandparents' generation in the 1900s to now. Like there is a lot of horrifying things that we can see on the internet, but it's bringing light to those dark things and, issues and things that we don't agree with as a whole, where we are now as a more evolved society. Those things cannot hide in the shadows for much longer. And I think that, like I said, we've been kind of lied to. And so now it's, instead of going out there and trying to really trying to tell all these people that are definitely not fence sitters or on the same side as you, or they're apathetic, or they would rather be, head in the sand.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than try to focus on that, just rallying the people that are willing to bring about the change.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just like, meh, I can't do anything anyway, so why bother?
Yeah, that attitude is really, it's frightening. But for those of us that, especially if you're younger, I mean, and you feel like you're going to live on the planet for another 20, 30, 40, 50, who knows years, we have a personal responsibility for ourselves. And I think that's where I kind of got it wrong, like numerous times, just giving so much of my own personal power, time, money, resources, clothing away to people that I thought were like less fortunate than I was, left me without sweater and food and and da-da-da-da-da. And so I've kind of had to go, I think maybe I'm going about this the wrong way, and realizing that the real change is actually going within.
Yes. Everything is about self. I mean, we live in a world, I actually think it was Kevin that put it this way, a series of moments. I mean, life is a series of moments. We have no idea how many of these more moments we're going to have, so that we need to make the most out of the moments that we do have. And we need to look inside ourselves and look at the way that we perceive things and the way that we perceive people, and just come with a... it sounds like I'm spouting crap, but because I don't always follow it, but you need to make peace with yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that people need to make peace with themselves at first. It's like, okay, these are why my perceptions are the way they are. And these are my values, these are my morals. And hopefully I can, associate with people that whose morals and values kind of align with mine.
Yeah, know thyself.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, I've had to learn a lot of things the hard way. I have had my own mental health, grief, trauma, losses. I think that was my ego that was engaged there, or I could have done that better. And, I've probably burned some bridges over the years, just being a little bit reckless, and that's your youth. I want to say that we all go through that, right? And for me, I think one of the hardest things was trying to come out in and around the millennium. And here's like just one other example of where I see, especially in Canada, geez, we're so lucky to live here, coming out, you know, and that I had a girlfriend and that I loved her. And so, you know, at that time it was like, whew, that is not a cool thing. You know, there was no gay straight alliances in school. That would have been like the talk of the town, and you lose friends in your family.
Did you come out in high school?
I came out, I would say I was 19. So it was probably like just after first year of university, but like was closeted for months and lived with fear and shame. And I'm still living with that sort of trauma. And I have been, people think, oh, we live in Canada and there's rainbow sidewalks and there's no homophobia here, whatever. I can say that.
Till you paint a rainbow sidewalk and you find out real quick.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I can say like, no, there is still the slurs and things, but it's not as bad as it was 15, 20 years ago. And the kids today have more education, younger, and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with the environment. So like for my own personal self, what I'm saying is, you know, those traumas and those shadow side of ourselves that we hid for so long and had traumas when we were younger sort of play out into our adult life. So it doesn't matter like how good you're doing on the outside or how much awesome intention you have to get a project going or anything. If you aren't right within yourself and you have these demons or insecurities that you haven't worked out, they can come out in you know, not the right or the best way.
Yes.
And for me, like I turned to alcohol. Like I started drinking like, I don't know, grade 11 or something, and then into university, going out to the bar and that kind of stuff. And it was a way for me to kind of, like I was quite insecure in my younger years. So for me, it was a way like if I had a couple drinks in me, well, geez, like I'm freaking awesome. And
totally different.
Yeah, I'm ripping up a rug and all this kinds of stuff. But eventually, and like working in bartending and then in music and everything, eventually it was like, you know, you're experimenting with hallucinogenics, and then there's other drugs. And like I've had to, again, like road to recovery, like a lot of it is like looking at your shadow self side, looking at the trauma that we're faced with in our youth and then also in our communities and all of it. So I think like cultural wide, we are all having to like look at those things within ourselves and examine them, and then also look at the outer world and go, wow, like how much are we looking at that is traumatizing and causing grief? And then what are you actually doing in your day to overcome those things?
Yeah. One thing I think that the kid, I have, my daughter's 23, and I have grandkids as well. Mm-hmm. However old they are. They're little. Anyway, I keep thinking about, you know, especially them, my grandkids that are like 7, 6, 2. They got another 80, 90, 100 years to live on this planet. I'd like to, you know, leave them a world that they can want to live in. I was thinking the other day, and I was thinking, you know, the differences between the right and the left and this, that, the other thing, and how there seems to be such this divide and such this split, and it's like they're bad, and these people say they're bad. And I kind of look at movies, and I think to myself, okay, well, in movies, when they look at the future, and it's always a nice utopian world, we all get along, everybody's included in everything, you know, there's nobody hungry. And then the bad guy is always the rich, evil person that wants to take
mm-hmm.
over the world and run it their way. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of think, well, I kind of like the left side or the utopian world a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like that's that duality or the hypocrisy. It's like the finger pointing, and that's a human thing. It's like no one wants to take responsibility for what's going on. It was the older generation. It was the rich guy. It was, you know, it's the corporations. It's this, it's that. But ultimately, it's all of us. And I mean, you can focus on the positive. You can focus on the negative. Yeah, there's a lot of negative things in the world, and again, it's bringing it back to what can you do. And I mean, just doing a simple practice, you know, in the morning or yoga, for example, and I'm so blessed to have a partner that's really working in mindfulness, meditation, yoga, all that kind of stuff. And what she's taught me and some of the leaders of consciousness and rising your own vibration and attracting things that you want in your life, it is all about setting your intention and just doing those things for yourself radiates outward that frequency and it all comes back to love, right? And when you get enough people that are mindful and they're aware of what their actions are in every single day, then that sends out a wave and yeah, hopefully it
a nice big
all the people.
Kindness wave. I think that's what we need in the world. A
Yeah.
huge tsunami of kindness.
Just blanketing the world. Okay, let's all focus on that. Listeners out there, let's all think about that. Kindness wave.
Big kindness wave.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think of the times where I've just felt so helpless, or times that I've just been like, man, I went out there and I tried so hard and I had such the best intentions and things went sideways, or I failed, or, this, that, and the other thing. But it's led me to where I am today. And I mean, I bet that there's a lot of people out there that are feeling as let down or lied to, or environmental grief or injustice, or, but all I can say is that I'm really noticing on social media, and just, I travel back and forth a lot, is that a lot of things, ways that we treated people, ways that we treated animals, ways that we treated the environment in the past, couple hundred years, is no longer being acceptable moving forward. But like the Titanic, you can't just turn the ship around, right? Like, I mean, it's like you put on the brakes and then it's a slow turn.
Exactly.
And we might still hit a darker time, and rising rent levels, food security, it's going to bring people together more so. So if anything, it's actually human nature, I think, that we have to find the darkness in order to change. We're too comfortable.
Yeah. We like the world we've created, or that's been created for us. It's simple for us. It's easy.
Yeah, and we've also been programmed to,
Yes.
buy into what you see on TV, right? And then you compare yourself to those things. Well, I'm not good enough. I don't have this. I don't look like that. So again, there has to be a wave of a spiritual awakening within each person to no longer buy into those things and stop buying plastic crap and, recycle. And I'm just like you. I'm not perfect. I forget my reusable mug. I mean,
sometimes
we can do better.
I buy the wrong K-Pod sometime. I will admit it. I usually get the recyclable kind, but sometimes you forget.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say that I've become completely apathetic. I'm waiting for this wave to rise within me again as to, like, where can I use my skill set and my passion to bring all those people together again? Or where can I share my story of, where I went through depression, or I had to get sober before it was trendy? And again, it's like the lessons for me where it's like feeling like I'm not a part of the whole, and I'm having to, like, go at these battles alone, per se. Which is okay, because I feel like sometimes we have to go at things alone to actually, in order to change, we can become distracted.
Yeah.
So on a personal level, there's like the personal level of what you can do to heal and change and love yourself and have a practice. And then there's the community. And, that's why I love lending my hand to the actual community. And in the past, definitely have tried art, culture, sustainability, those sorts of things.
How long have you been sober?
Well, we were having some casual drinks last year, but over the last 6 years, I would say I've been sober about four of the years, and I've been sober again 5 months. So, I mean, I've kind of gone through little waves where I was just like, oh man, when it came down to it, I was just very lost. I think it was 2013. I had a couple of years of festivals back to back, went sideways when I worked in Alberta, paid the debts off. And when I came back, you go away and you kind of are fantasizing that things are the same back home as they were before you left. But everything's changing while you're gone.
Yeah, and everything's changing while I'm here, too.
Yeah, so right? Yeah. And then you come back and you're like, you want to pick up where you left off, but everything's totally changed. I think I personally, myself, my probably part of my identity to my ego of who I thought I was and wanted to be. The persona, I wasn't ready to let go of that. And I had to go through some other initiations and learning lessons and falling on my face. And at the end of it, like, all I knew was that, you know, I need to take a break from this party scene.
Yeah.
Right. And because there's great things that can come of it. Like, festivals are actually, I think, like, everyone's kind of like getting like, oh, the white people, you know, and I am Caucasian and I totally believe that we need to be giving more power back to First Nations. Like,
Yeah.
I think that is one huge thing that we need to do. But one thing that culture has created is these festivals, and in these festivals, an acceptance of love, community, art, you know,
Yeah.
wellness, yoga, music coming together, like kids and colorful and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting, just the whole entire trip of life, and who are we to really judge the master plan? Like, as my friend DK would have said, like, who are we to judge the master plan? We don't know why things are happening on this Earth in the Milky Way galaxy of the universe,
Yeah.
right? We don't know.
No, we don't.
We don't know. So we can get really upset about it, or we can accept that, okay, this is where we're at right now. And the right geniuses are going to come along, and the right funding is going to be there, and we're going to be able to turn it around.
Yeah.
And it is. And it's simple things like researching. And when you figure out that something isn't necessarily the right thing to be consuming, make that change.
Right. And I think throughout history, we've always had that where somebody's come along and it's like, we've always done it that way. And then somebody's come along and it's like, but that way's not working. Here's a better way, and a more sustainable way, and a more environmental friendly way, or whatever the case may be. So I think looking forward to the future is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, you're kind of talking about like business as usual, right? Like, that's how they used to have it, but now there's the new business
Right.
as usual.
Well,
It's like,
there's just different ways that we can do things, I think, to achieve. For example, Elon Musk and his electric cars. People would, like, I heard about electric cars when I was a kid back in the 70s. They were, I was told, a pipe dream and would never happen. And yet now I see so many Teslas driving around just here in the Comox Valley. So it's somebody that came up with an idea to change the status quo, and he took a lot of flack for it and still does.
And he gave his patents away for free. I think, like, we need more champions like that.
Yeah.
We do. We definitely just need more champions. Like, it's interesting. I mean, there's so many aspects to life on this planet, and the different societies and power, and who's been in control for so long. And the thing is it's coming to an end.
Yeah.
Like, it can't. I mean, yeah, money is the most powerful thing that we have, but people power and love, and that actually, I do think trumps
it.
Yeah.
And to use that shitty word, trumps
Didn't
it.
want to say it. Trumps it. Yeah, it is. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I think most people just need to act locally and have the courage to look at yourself and, you know, see where you can change. And I'll be the first person to admit that I've made mistakes in the past, and have done things selfishly or unconsciously, and, you know, but my intentions really have always been there to get people to the next level, to see that everyone succeeding at what they're doing. And I think that wouldn't that just be a beautiful life where everyone is thriving and everyone gets to come into this world and be celebrated for their best self, and that there's a unique position that they get to fill. And I think that is the case, but it's just we're blind to it at the moment.
It's like the utopia I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to come back? You want to come on the show again? You want to find some people to talk to, and we'll get them in here and we'll do some yakking?
Yeah, I would love to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to it.
I would also like to know where these listeners are that are tuning in around the world.
Wow.
So if they want to give a shout out as to where they are on the planet. And
I can actually tell you when I go into, most of them are locally here, Comox Valley, Campbell River, through the island. But I have steady listeners in San Jose.
All right.
I have quite a few in the States, right across Canada. I've had people listening in Australia, Austria once.
Beautiful.
The UK. So we'll get out there.
That's amazing.
It's a small but loyal market, I think.
Yeah,
I just need to make it bigger.
There's 7 billion people on the planet. If they want to connect with us, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Andrew.
You've been listening to The Doghouse with Andrew Davis.